A common thread or theme that we see in some of our comments on some of our latter videos that we have posted on our channel is the idea of the significant majority of the Jamaican population in terms of the ethnic group being disenfranchised and disempowered. And we want to take some time to have a conversation about that and the impact that the disenfranchisement and the disempowerment have on the population of people as a whole. So let's jump into it.
Jam from family, the Jam from family, yeah. Jam fam, come hang with me.
Hello, Wagwan. Big up yourself, whether you're there yard or you're there abroad. Welcome back to another episode of Life with the Jam Fam. So on this episode, we're going to be looking at the concept or the idea that the majority ethnic group in Jamaica have some level of disempowerment and disenfranchisement that they're experiencing, and try to discuss and explore some of the consequences of this in their everyday living. So we're going to get started by first of all highlighting the two words that we're focusing on in this conversation. So the first word that I want to look at is disenfranchisement. And to be disenfranchised mean that you are being deprived of the right to vote. So in this case, for this video, we're going to look at that as being denied or deprived the right to have a say. The word disempowerment means to make a person or a group of persons less powerful or less confident. Now, with these two words defined, and we are all at a baseline of what they mean, we're going to have a look at how this plays a part in the life and the advancement of this group of people in Jamaica that are considered to be disempowered and disenfranchised. There is no denying the fact that the group of people in Jamaica who are the large majority in terms of the ethnic profile of Jamaica have been given some level of disenfranchisement and disempowerment at the point where we had a turn of colonialized leadership and ruling, and when we gained independence. And this is something that is commonplace wherever colonial powers were before, whether it's from Anglophone, Francophone, or any of the other groups who have colonized regions for extended periods of time. The whole idea of it is so that they leave a legacy of their hierarchical structure that were in place when they were in power, so that this oppression and this suppression continues, and it gives that minds in the minds of the individuals who are left behind. And it is designed in such a way to breed inferiority and superiority complexes amongst the groups of people. And in Jamaica, one of the things that it has borne is colorism and different structures of classism that has existed as a result. And of course, at the turn of the century, when people were trying to seek who are going to be in places of power and who are going to be dominating the sphere in different places, these people who were selected from the sphere of influence in which they were intermingling before. And a lot of people who are from the Jamaican Israelite, or commonly known as Bantu Jamaicans, they were people who were somehow shunned and marginalized at that point in time. And many of them did not seek to go out into these places because they felt that it wasn't a place in which they were going to be accepted. And the challenges of getting into those rooms and getting into those places were significantly high. Even though that in some level have changed since, it is still a phenomenon within the country that this is still the case, because it has permeated society in such a way that, and it's passed on from generation to generation and has become a cyclical trend. There is increasing number, however, of Jamaican Bantus who are dominating spaces that before you wouldn't have seen them in. And so there is a marked change in the way in which the landscape of Jamaica is set up. However, there are still more work to be done. And one of the problems that we have with the concept of feeling that we're disenfranchised or disempowered is that we end up looking for scenarios to prove or to justify our case and our point. And it's referred to as confirmation bias. So because of the fact that this is what we think and this is what we believe, we can highlight scenarios in which this is the case. And therefore, it makes people feel like even more of an underdog in these scenarios and these situations. Now, the other thing that we need to take into consideration is when we're given this phenomenon that is called disenfranchisement and disempowerment, what it does is it creates victimhood. And in creating victimhood creates a victim mentality. And that victim mentality creates a group of people who are content with accepting the status quo. The reason they are content with accepting the status quo is because they have conditioned themselves into the belief that they cannot do anything about their predicament and their situation that they're in, and therefore it's not something that they can solve. This is their situation, this is their portion, and this is how life is. And that's what happens when people are conditioned into becoming victims. And it is done in a lot of countries that were previously colonized. And it helps to hold them back as a people from the growth and the aspirations that they could take on, because they are less likely to seek out alternative solutions to their problems and to their predicament, because they've come to accept that this is the status quo and the best solution is to accept it because there is just no other alternative. The other scenario that it creates when we look at victimhood is that it creates a group of people who seeks for the solution to their problem from outward rather than from within. And we know that the solutions to the problems that we face is normally ones that are going to be from within, because we are the ones with the problem. We know what the problem needs in order to be solved, and therefore actively seek out the solution. When we are in victimhood mode, what we do is we look for the solutions from outside. So we look at all other people to solve the problems for us. What this does, in essence, is it creates an air of entitlement. And let me explain this. So this air of entitlement that it creates is that people feel like they're entitled to be given stuff or for something to be done for them by other people. And so they create that odd cycle where they're the victim, this is a disservice that is being done to them, and somebody needs to solve the problem. And therefore, they feel like they're entitled to get this level of generosity or that level of benefit or that level of grace from elsewhere, rather than digging their heels in, finding a solution that works, and then be able to get out of the system that they are in, because it is possible to escape, but it has been created to give the illusion and the impression that it's inescapable without other people being the solution bearer to the problems that we are experiencing, when indeed we are the ones who are the carriers for the solutions that we need. Now, the problem with this disenfranchisement and disempowerment become a cyclical process, because it also faces the issues of the resistance to change and to adaptation, because people are so fixed in their cycle and the mindset that this cannot be solved by them, and that somebody else needs to do it, and that no matter what they do, it won't make a difference, that they resist changing, they resist adapting, and overall keeps themselves from growing in a way that they should. By no means am I diminishing the grave injustices that have been done to many people in our society because of their ethnic group or their social standing in society, which is of itself a social construct. However, part of getting out of that system is a requirement that we are going to be able to eradicate the idea of being a victim and start to think about how we can find solutions. Because if we can think about it that way, that we are victors who have had a misfortune in life, which is rather unfortunate that this had become our situation that we had to exist in. However, when we recognize that we have control over how our future goes, then we are more inclined to work actively at making that change that is necessary. And so we will look for the confirmation bias that tells us that success is possible, because we'll see all of the different scenarios in which people in our same predicament were able to rise above it and succeed and get onto the other side as the victor that they knew in themselves that they could be, in spite of the fact that society was trying to tell them otherwise. In the same way, we come to the place where we recognize that this status quo is unacceptable. We don't need to accept mediocrity. We don't need to accept incompetence. And we don't need to accept the rhetoric that has been sold to us for centuries, because we understand that in us lies the power to do things differently. And so we dismantle the status quo and try to create more profitable situations and more profitable infrastructure for us and for our people and our offspring as well. And this is because when we decide that we're no longer going to be victims, but we're going to be victors, we seek for the solutions within. We assess the problems that we have. We look at what those are, whether those are financial, educational, medical, physical, whatever the problems are ours. And so we seek out how we can solve those problems within ourselves, how we can work collaboratively, and how we can work with cooperative responsibility and collective responsibility to solve the problems that we are being faced with. And in so doing, we become less resistant to change and more susceptible to the change. And therefore, with that susceptibility to change, we also become more adaptable, because we have to adapt in order to embrace the changes that we are trying to create for ourselves and for the people that are around us within our sphere. Now, it is all good and well to say all of these things, but now we need to also examine how is it that these things can be possible. Is there a way in which it can be possible? Well, we can look at scenarios to see where this can be possible, that we change the story and the narrative. Marcus Garvey has given us a plethora of ideas as to how to do that. And I'm also going to draw on some ideas from other Bantus on the African continent as to way of life that they live that can be implemented in our sphere, just to give us an understanding of how we can overcome some of these struggles. What Jamaicans need is best represented by the Swahili word Harambe. Now, Harambe is the motto for the country of Kenya, and what it means is all pulling together. Now, it's synonymous to the motto of Jamaica, which says, out of many, one people, which gives us a concept and an idea that although we have differences, whether it's ethnic difference or social differences or whatever the differences might be, or class differences, we all have one cause. And therefore, if we all pull together, we can achieve that aim that we set out to achieve. And that is to help our people to feel less disenfranchised and less disempowered. Now, in order for us to realize this, one of the things that we need to start to do is start to think about how we can indeed change the game plan that has been in existence for this far. And in changing the game plan, we're looking at how we can make life best for us and for the individuals around us. One of the ways in which we can do so is through collaboration. It's through collective responsibility, where everybody is responsible and being their brother's keeper. One of the things that we will need to do if we're ever going to get to a place where we feel empowered and enfranchised is to look at how we can build out an economy that is run and managed by us as a people. Now, in order to do so, we need to see problems that exist that add value to the society and use those as business tools so that we can set up businesses that are going to improve the economy in which we are living. We also need to look at some of our way of life and see how we can restore some more moral values to our society and become that beacon of hope that we used to be for other nations, whether in the Caribbean or within our close sphere or even further afield. We need to improve our marketing technique and strategies, and also improve the service quality that we provide, not just in the tourist sector, but in the country as a whole, in the way that we cater for the needs of people, treating them with human dignity, regardless of their class, regardless of or their perceived class, regardless of their ethnicity, or any of the other things that human beings use to show prejudice to others. We need to recognize that we're one people and we pull together to make a unity for us, that a society where everybody can thrive and succeed. In so doing, we need to build a foundation on which we are productive people, where we start to be producers more so than consumers, where we start to focus on manufacturing to see how we can elevate our country. If we look at other countries who have escaped colonialism and triumph, the primary thing that they do is they start to build out their countries to not just address their problems, but also solve other people's problems. And they do so through business, through productivity, through manufacturing, and through the good utilization of their time. So they value time, they understand the value that is in time, and they use that time productively for the advancement of themselves, for their people, and for meeting the needs of others. They also recognize and understand how to scale businesses up and how to use that as a tool to improve their economy and improve the way of life for their people. Hopefully, as a nation, we can start to see how we can each individually and collectively start to practice some of these things, just to be able to get to a place where, as Jamaicans, we can indeed feel empowered To add to our inspiration, I will leave you with two Marcus Garvey quotes. And the first one is, "A race without authority and power is a race without respect." And the second one that it says is, "Progress is the attraction that moves humanity." So first, we need to get to the place where we start to showcase authority. And in so doing, it's by recognizing that we are victors and start to solve the problems that we need, which will in effect give us respect. And then on the other hand of it, we now start to grow out that authority and development in terms of progress. And in so doing, we will move humanity to treat us in the way that we know we deserve to be treated. But it's not going to be handed out and given to us. We have got to take it. And this is how we take it, by making ourselves into a group of people that can be respected. So we're coming out of town and we realize that there is a store here that has been recently opened, and we're just going to go in and check it out. So this is what it is. So them selling bubble tea. So we're going to go and see if they do the ones that we like. So this is how inside look. Yep. And this is the menu. Yep, that's what the menu look like. So can you imagine? Oh, they have a deli as well. Look. Some baked stuff as well. So it's not too bad. We're going to see what sort of drink they have and whether or not it's a drink that we would want, because most of them seem like milk tea so far. So let's go check it out. So that was what Leona got.
At least that's what I think I got.
Pardon me?
At least that's what I think I got.
We can't figure out what it is, and we can't differentiate which one is the coconut flavor and which one is the oat. And this is what I got. And we bought boba because we wanted boba, but we got the jelly cubes instead. That's what is in there. And so it's not the experience, is it? But we're glad that we were able to treat ourselves to it.
I just don't like the green tea.
I think for me this is why I normally don't buy milk teas.
Okay. The milk tea is with black tea. And I prefer black tea to green.
And I also prefer the fruit teas.
But yeah.
Because then there's no milk to contend with. But it was a good treat. We supported a newly started business. That's good. So we just now need to wait for food, and then that's that. So it's been a little while since we've had a mother-daughter date, and so we decided we're going to do one today and come and see this place that's newly opened, as we showed you, and then we decided we were going to buy some food as well. Now that we've tried the tea. And I'll just show you the food that we got. I was so surprised when I saw what we got. So let's show you. So that's Eleona's. We decided to go with fries. And of course the chicken is wrapped up here. And so I got breast and side breast. So mine is in here. And that's my fries. And we were just saying that we can't possibly eat all of this in one go. So we're going to contemplate what to do with it. So we're going to have as much of it as we can and then pack the rest away for another time. But we're going to try and see how it tastes. It's nice and hot, so hopefully it will taste lovely. How do you think it tastes?
It's okay. I think we could use some salt.
A little bit more salt. Okay. Oh, you think it needs more salt?
The Jam Fam family. We're Irie, living the good life. We're royal, cruising through the West Indies, having fun, enjoying the good life. Jam Fam family, the Jam Fam family, yeah. Jam Fam, come hang with me.
Thank you for staying with us here on another episode of Life with the Jam Fams. Bye for now, and we will see you in the next video.